Good morning. Welcome everybody to the training, learning, and development community. Thanks for coming in today. I'm excited to be here. All right. So usually we don't have a bunch of guests in these community discussions. I'm glad that we do today. This is a great topic that I'm very excited to talk about. And but the way we're going to work it, I know that we have a couple more guests that are in the chat audience right now, Carrie and Mohammad. Once we get about halfway through the broadcast, I'll go ahead and check with these guys that are live right now and then ask them whether or not anyone who wants to opt out, and then we can let you guys in. So please stick around. And anybody else, if you're interested in coming on and being on screen, they'd be happy to have you. And so before we get started, let's do some intros. And I'm just going to go clockwise where I can see. And so to my right is Jean Marrapodi. I don't know, she might be on the bottom for everybody else, but and Jean, could you just introduce yourself and tell us a little about it, who you are, what you do, and why you're even here today?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jean Marrapodi. I have been in e-learning for about 25 years. I was one of the early pioneers working on things to bring things online. I currently work at Mass Mutual, and I'm doing UX work for their website, bringing the learning perspective in to help make the website make more sense. I started my career as a special education teacher, taught in the first grade classroom for 3 years, loved what I did teaching kids. Then I moved from from New Jersey to New England. Then there were no teaching jobs. So I wound up in training, and I also teach at the collegiate level and do adult education work with low literacy folks. So lots of teaching, lots of different areas, and I'm thrilled to be here.
No. So my experience is that I've been in higher ed teaching in English as a second language for about 10 years. Right out of college, I took a job in China for a year teaching in a university. And so after that, I went and got my graduate degree in TESOL. And so I've been teaching in a number of universities since then. And within the past 2 years, I've kind of started to transition more to instructional design. However, I'm still teaching in higher ed, and I'm kind of exploring that. So kind of like Rubina mentioned, I don't have any experience with, some of those authoring tools like Articulate. I played around a little bit with Captivate, but, I haven't really dove into the, corporate or business side of L&D. So I'm looking to make that transition, but I have been, participating more in a lot of these communities like TLDC and trying to kind of up my game so that I'm a better online teacher, and then also ready to kind of make that transition.
Love it. Yeah. And you're kind of new on the scene on TLDC, Randy, and it's great to have you.
Rubina Halwani. I've been in instructional design for about 7 years now. I started off in teaching. I was teaching in English for 7th grade for about 3 years, and then transitioned into some different roles in business and corporate, and eventually learned about instructional design, started learning about authoring tools, and took some courses in that, and then transitioned.
All right. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to just jump right into the questions because I have a ton of questions for you guys, and I hope that's okay. And I'm going to take them, I know that in the ask a question area, you could vote up certain questions, but I'm just going to go in sort of an order that I had listed some of these questions out in TLD chat in our Slack group, just to get in there. And I know that Rubina filled out some replies, and let's see how this goes. Let me see here. Let me grab these questions. Okay, here's my first question. Jean, are instructional designers teachers?
Oh yeah, in many ways. You are teaching material and organizing material. Today's teachers actually have to align what they're teaching with standards. In our world, we have to align what we're writing with the goals and the objectives. But the key difference there is we are creating the goals and the objectives as opposed to the teachers being given the goals and objectives and the textbooks that they have to work with.
That's awesome. There's a question that Lynn McNamee had posted on social media last night that I had seen, and I sort of, knowing that you were going to be in here, Jean, I sort of wanted to ask this one specifically to you. And so when the pandemic started, was there any teachers that came to you for resources on how to deliver synchronous learning or deliver online?
Yeah, I did speak with several teachers. They were panic stricken that this was going to be so different and so hard. In some ways it is, and in some ways it isn't. It's learning to think differently, thinking in shorter bites, thinking about more of the concept of the flipped classroom the hybrid classroom, which they are beginning to come to. But especially in higher ed, and I'm sure you saw this, Randy, they don't get it. Many of them don't get that I can't just lecture at people and I have to organize my material so that students can find things. There was a lot that they have to switch over. So yeah.
And I'd love to hear it from Randy and Rubina too. I mean, Randy in particular, did you move in this direction because you were needing to deliver more content online, and so is that why instructional design became a little more interesting to you? Or yeah,
I think I started kind of my journey towards instructional design before this even started. So I've kind of always been a little bit more driven towards tech in the classroom and kind of exploring that. But it wasn't until like about 2 or 3 years ago before I started really trying to take charge of my own online professional development through different avenues. And so when this happened, I just kind of ramped it up. So I was already kind of heading that direction before this happened.
Nice. Have you had more people approach you for help with, like people that are in K through 12 or higher ed, for assistance with doing say online classroom types of activities?
I've had a couple of people within my own department, and then a little bit outside of that. Not a lot. I think one of the things that I feel is that within higher ed, and some context, at least my experience has been, it's kind of siloed in that I feel like there hasn't been as big a push to kind of open up collaboration in the way that like I see in TLDC and some of these other communities that I've been in. And so I feel like sometimes there's blocks to the collaboration and to the open discussion and sharing of ideas and, connecting people with tools and resources.
Wow, that's really interesting. I sort of want to talk a little bit about that with Jean and Rubina. And Rubina, I want to ask you, when the pandemic happened, did you offer assistance to any to teachers to help them with anything? Because I know that Lynn had mentioned that she had offered resources and people didn't take them up on it. I know that even for my son's school, I did the same thing and I didn't get any, no takers on that at all. And I'm wondering if you've had that type of experience.
Yeah, so the school where my daughters go to had a very difficult time transitioning online, and I offered if they needed any help and stuff. They were still trying to wrap around if they had to be online very long. They were hoping that they would go back to open classrooms really quickly, and so nobody kind of understood then where we'd be at now. And so they didn't take up on that, which was fine. We've also had some things in my department, similar to what Randy said, folks working in silos. A lot of them didn't realize that they could come to our team for delivering content. They were doing things on live seminars, conferences, mostly, in-person training. And now they had to shift. Otherwise, they would have nothing to do for the entire summer and possibly get furloughed. And so they were starting to scramble. They jumped onto us once they realized that we can do the online training or delivery. And we decided to do virtual training through Hangouts and Zoom, and just kind of try lots of different things. And then now turning some of those trainings into online deployment also.
Wow. You know, and Carrie is making a great point here in the chat. She says, I think there's a disconnect where some teachers do not know what IDs do. Oops. I put out a message offering help, but didn't get any takers. And let's see, it's scrolling out of my reach. But Jean, what do you have to say about that? I mean, is that something that you feel is exists, that lack of understanding from teachers about exactly what instructional designers do?
Absolutely. They have no clue. I mean, your parents probably don't get what you do. Instructional design is fairly a new field, and they don't get that there are people like this who actually think through things. Being in my world right now, I am in the digital experience world with lots of tech people, and they don't get the big picture. I will make comments like, you know, you're jumping from here to here to here to here to here to here to here, and the customer really kind of wants to find the information that they're looking for, and it's revelatory. And that we think differently. I used to think that what I did was a lot of common sense, and it's not. Yeah, you just think differently. I'm sure you've seen this in higher ed, that the professors don't think that they need somebody. They say, well, I teach what's in the textbook, and the textbook has organized things for me, and they think that instructional design is chopping up the textbook to fit it into the 13 weeks. When I challenge them with, in the end, what do you want them to know and do? When they finish your class, what should they be able to do? And I tell a story about going through an accounting class, and that student in the accounting class gets an A and sits down at the desk of an accounting firm for summer internship and freezes because they don't know what to do, because there isn't transference and application. Starting out with, in the end, what do you want them to know and do, just transforms what their thinking is about how they plan their classes and the way we achieve the goals.
Wow, Jean, I definitely timestamp that one because I'm going to be posting that one out there. That's a great reply. Randy, let me ask you this. Do you feel like teachers make better instructional designers?
That's a hard question to answer. I think my experience has been, having trained kind of within teaching has been my field. So I mean, I actually went to a master's program that was set up directly to, you know, address pedagogy and give me experience in the classroom, and then do kind of reflective teaching. So I think my experience has not been the norm for a lot of maybe college teachers. So I think I would say it depends. You know, I have that experience, and I think a lot of college teachers are more content experts. And then it's kind of up to the instructional designer right now, I think, to just not only teach them what it's like to teach online, but also like, what does it mean to be good teachers? And I think, like, you know, Linton was just alluding to like backwards design. And it's like, for some teachers, that whole concept of backwards design is like kind of mind blowing. And, you know, that's something that I was kind of already doing because of my master's program that I got training in, but I don't think that's the norm for a lot of teachers. So I think I wouldn't say that, you know, all teachers make great instructional designers. I think it's partly their own training and then also their experience, and if they've kind of started to work in that direction.
That's great. Thank you for that. Rubina, do you think that having been a teacher, that helped you be a better instructional designer?
Absolutely. I always reflect back on the feeling that I had in the classroom, the way I used to teach. I mentioned that some of the skills that transfer that teachers sometimes are not self-aware about is really the presentation of the content in ways that are easily digestible by the student. And the student can be 5 10, 15, and an adult. They really need to understand all sorts of concepts, and teaching really helps you break things down, chunk things down, scaffold things. Those are in my toolkit and really help me in instructional design.
Great. Well, let me ask you this, because I do have a question that is specific to this. And so what do you think is the most important thing that instructional designers can learn from teachers?
We're just fabulous. But other than that, for myself, doing English language arts, I keyed up to my strengths. And so I would be different from, let's say, a math teacher in the way they present, but they may have their own strengths. So I would say you can come into instructional design from any wide variety of backgrounds and just be very self-aware of what it is you have to offer and what can transfer to your next position. For me, I was extremely creative. We did a lot of role play and dramatic presentation. And so I would use that as when I'm designing scenario-based examples and training and stuff like that. So I'm always relying back on it, and just, I think it's a great asset for me.
Love it. Love it. Hey, Jean, so I mean, your experience as an educator is so vast. So I'd love to hear your answer on this one. I mean, the most important thing instructional designers can learn from teachers. What do you think about that? Aside from patience, which Kara mentioned.
Teachers actually have the expertise of how students react to things. They know what works and doesn't work in a classroom. They can help with level setting. If you're going to be teaching a bunch of first graders about microbiology, wow, you have to really scale stuff down, but you can do that. And they have the expertise in understanding the level set of the grade that they are experienced in. Similarly, in higher ed, they will often have a good idea of the difference between what freshmen can do and what seniors can do in advanced classes. And sometimes as instructional designers, we'll throw things in that are too easy for experts or too difficult for beginners. And that's where their subject matter expertise helps us balance our ideas out, especially if it's a realm we're not terribly familiar with.
Interesting. Very much. Thank you. And I want to ask this question, next one, which is, now you talked a little bit about how you switched from academia to being just a corporate trainer, right? So what was that reason? Why was that? How did you evolve that way? You had started out as, I forget, you were a teacher, and then you moved into training, right? Was that just because job availability?
Yeah, it was job availability. I moved to New England in the 80s, and there was a glut in the teacher market. Here's a great example. I applied to a district that had K-12, one of each grade, to teach first grade. And I was experienced in teaching first grade. The ad, this was back in the olden days when we had newspapers, the ad appeared in the local paper one day on a Tuesday. That's the only time the ad ran. And they had 400 resumes by Friday. And so they were just sorting things. And I wound up experienced with most of a master. So I wound up in the too expensive pile as they were sorting stuff. And so I didn't get interviews. And I was surprised because I thought I'm a great teacher and I have great experience. But I was an unknown entity in New England. So I literally fell into training. I went to work at CompUSA as the training marketing manager and loved when I got to substitute in the classroom versus selling the classes to corporations.
Interesting. So how much did you have to, I mean, jumping into that, into this whole new job, how much did you have to learn about instructional design, like immediately, to be able to, to perform well?
Well, I had been on some curriculum committees when I was teaching, and so I understood the sequential scaffolding that needed to happen as you built math curriculums and other curriculums. So I had a good feel for that. I was
Okay.
also the teacher who would look at a lesson and say, "This is stupid," and like Rubina, go and do a creative version of whatever it was. So I tended to be pretty flexible with what I did, but one of the first things I did when I was at Bank Boston was I signed up for an instructional design class at Graduate School of America, which is now Capella. And so I began to learn the foundations of what we were doing, and then got a master's in instructional design and loved the learning. And I did it all online, and eventually a PhD in adult ed, because I'm a learning junkie. So,
Yeah.
Understanding what it was and getting involved with the e-learning guild when that got built out, and just learning from other people. I'm a lifelong learner, and I call myself a learning junkie. I just love finding new approaches to things and following communities like this where we can share best practices.
I love it. I love it. So Randy, how about you? Like, you had talked a little bit about that, how your interest in instructional design sort of has evolved. Just can you tell us a little bit more? Give us a little more detail about how you've moved in that direction. I know you were also in the military, so maybe just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so I started taking a instructional design and e-learning. I guess it's kind of a micro-credentialing program through Oregon State University. And I started taking that at the early part of this year. And then before that, I'd taken some 2 other classes within instructional design through a different university. And so I was already starting to delve into this and then try to apply that into my own teaching. And then I kind of ramped that up once COVID hit, and I was just spending a lot of time at home, and starting to see that there was a need for me to take that information that I was getting in my courses and directly apply it, and then kind of help teachers, as much as possible, and ones that, like we've mentioned, are willing and open to kind of collaborate and connect. So that's something that I've been trying to do and build my portfolio up. I think that the trouble I have is trying to distinguish between the corporate, business side of instructional design and then higher ed, and thinking about going in the job market in the near future and trying to figure out, which area seems best for my skill set. And so that's kind of been a little bit of a struggle. But I think right now I'm just trying to apply what I'm learning in my courses directly into my own online and blended teaching.
Very interesting. Let me ask you this. If you could talk to yourself, like say 2 years ago, before you started moving on to the path of an instructional designer, what would you say now?
I think one of the biggest things is just to think really small sequential steps in that growth process. I think especially when I came into this community and just it seems overwhelming. And I think of some of these big people, within this community and things they're doing and posting on LinkedIn and hosting, some of their own live events. And I'm like, wow, it's the path to get there just seems kind of so far beyond where I'm at now. And so I think just that those small incremental changes and just be patient with those in that process. I think about a couple months ago, I applied for more of a corporate ID job. And, I look back at my portfolio and it makes me cringe just thinking about, I ended up giving like a presentation on Trello or something, and it was terrible. And so I look at that and I just wasn't ready, and I'm still not quite there yet. And so I think just that big patience. I was just reading Flower Darby's book, Small Teaching Online, and she really emphasizes that for teachers, just the small little steps. And so I think that was the biggest advice that I'd give myself about 2 years ago.
Oh no, that's great. And really that's what I'm trying to do, is find if there are other individuals sort of like you that are listening to this and they're kind of wondering about their own direction. Just giving them something to identify with. And I know, Randy, you're going to be able to find a ton of support within this community, just because that's by nature, that's what this whole audience is like. They're just very, very supportive. And Rubina, I'm going to ask you about that too. Like, you were a 7th grade teacher, but then you moved into training. What exactly like pushed you in that direction?
Oh gosh, that one's a windy road for me because it wasn't a linear build, which I didn't mind. And so somewhere along the line, while I was teaching and in my 3rd year and kind of projecting forward through other teachers that have been there for 20 and 30 years, they would come to me and say, if there's anything else you want to do in your life, now's the time to explore. And so I'm still exploring and feel mentally I may go back into a classroom. I'm just not done yet with exploration. And so that's what it was for me. And I learned about instructional design. We had really good programs in Maryland. UMBC offers a really good ISD program. I traveled a bit, worked in a bunch of different fields, and then it just kept ringing at me. And then when we came to Utah, I just put myself all in, wanted to go back to my career, and I just love it. I just love everything about it.
Wow, that is really interesting. God, and I just want to dive into more detail on that, but we don't have a ton of time.
Sure.
So let me ask Jean, how about this? Is there anything like, and you're probably still teaching, right? You do adult ed. I think you do like a lot of volunteer work. So you're still actually like a teacher and, but is there anything about it specifically that you miss that you don't have in instructional design?
I miss working with little kids. That's one of the fun things. I loved story time, and I got to do that with my grandkids when the pandemic started, and my kids were panic stricken about, oh, can you give us some time so that we can have some freedom? They just needed something to distract the kids. So I taught art classes online, and I taught story time once a week for them to help that. And boy, learning to do that online was crazy, trying to figure out how to do art when you can't walk around and see what the kids are doing. But I do miss that. I still teach at the college level. I teach at New England Institute of Business at Cambridge College, and I'm teaching actually in the HR program. So I'm teaching talent development and talent management, and I'm teaching organizational behavior and those sorts of things, and love watching folks get it. But New England College of Business has been online since 2008, so they have it. They have a great model that actually won awards when I was the director of e-learning under that. So we don't take the read the chapter and write a paper about it approach. We do very practical things, and oftentimes activities that are away from the computer that they have to report back on in the discussion. So, we kind of changed, we modified that a little bit.
So when you're talking about you're teaching people, are you saying like specifically you're delivering the content?
Yep.
That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we are an asynchronous school, so I wrote the course. We've got lectures and videos and readings, but I participate in the online discussions throughout the week. So with the asynchronous model, you have conversations that occur within a date stamp framework, and you as the teacher have to participate. And we know with online learning that the most effective teaching occurs when the teacher is involved with the students. It's not just grading the papers, but it's using the student's name and commenting on what they've done and helping them feel like it's a one-on-one relationship. You actually can go deeper in that when you're teaching in the classroom, when you get handed a stack of papers and you ship them back. So it's different.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to ask this one last question to you guys, and then I'm going to move on to the next round of guests. Hopefully I'll be able to bring some more folks on. But you have a couple resumes in front of you. You need to do a new hire for an instructional designer. One resume has a candidate that has a teaching background and an instructional design background. The other one doesn't. Which one is there? One that you would immediately favor?
It doesn't have teaching or doesn't have instructional design?
Doesn't have teaching.
I'll go first. It would depend on what kind of creativity I see in the resume and the portfolio. There are some teachers who are boring as all get out. There are some instructional designers who are rudimentary and they're great at organizing content, but miss the big point of what are we trying to get them to know and do. And so some of that you can teach, some of that you get a feel for with the way they develop things. But if somebody's portfolio is clip art ridden and boring, yeah, the resume isn't going to matter.
Nice. Rubina, can you answer that question? And while you're doing that, if I think it's Carrie and Mohammad, if you guys want to pop on, let me know in the chat, and then I can add you to the room when we're ready. But go ahead, Rubina.
Sure. We're actually looking to hire in the next month or two, so I will be facing lots of fun resumes, and then I can come back in and tell you which ones were the funniest. I think they need to still have foundations of instructional design. Without that, I just think they're not qualified for the position. Whether they taught or not is kind of like extra or bonus, or I want to see how they weave that in. You know, I would be looking at the portfolio. I'd be looking at the person and really just trying to see how self-aware they are on their strengths, regardless of teaching or not. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, cool. What do you think, Randy?
Yeah, I would say ditto to kind of what Jean and Rubina mentioned. And I think one of the things I would want to find out, I guess, from that interview is kind of how they address kind of problem solving and how do they work on a team. I guess being in the military, I had teamwork and collaboration kind of beat into me over that time. And it's something that I still, I feel like I'm constantly hitting my head against within higher ed is sometimes there's systems in place that stop me from collaborating. And so I would want to know kind of how they work together in that team environment. And if they have problems, how do they get help or work through those? So I think that would be one of my extra things I would be wanting to find out, in addition to, you know, kind of some of their teaching experience and how they interweave instructional design to that. But I agree with Rubina. I think that it would be really important to find out, you know, the depth of their instructional design background and kind of the models and how they implement some of the models. Like, I know a number of teachers are really like the whole idea of like backwards design or and walking through some of these instructional design models is kind of new for them, and some of them just don't really accept that. They're like, oh, this is the way I was taught in the classroom, and so this is the way I will do that. So I would kind of want to see that those two have been kind of intermeshed a little bit more.
Love it. Okay. So now I need a couple volunteers, and I want to bring Carrie and Mohammad back on. So anybody want to, who should I boot out first? All right. So Rubina and
I'm happy to jump if you want to keep Randy on. I'll stay in the chat.
You still have time, Randy? Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much. Hey, just everybody follow Jean. If you don't already know Jean, connect with her on LinkedIn or wherever you can. She is absolutely brilliant. And like she was saying in the beginning, she is one of the pioneers of e-learning. She really is. All right. So connect with her. And with that, I am going to go ahead and invite Carrie on, and let me get Mohammad in here too. And we'll keep going. So let me jump into another question while we're waiting for them to log in. You know, just kind of following up to what we were just talking about. Do you think, Randy, that you are a better instructional designer because you have a teaching background?
I do think that classroom experience and kind of working through that does help a lot. I think some of the experiences I've had, like Jean mentioned, being on curriculum committees, I think has really helped me really think through some of the design aspects and, looking at learning outcomes and learning objectives and dissecting those and then trying to pilot some of these new courses that I was, on committees creating. So I think that teaching experience has been helpful, but I think being on committees where I've actually kind of gotten the nuts and bolts of curriculum itself, I think has been maybe even more important than the actual teaching experience side of things.
Love it. Love it. And so I want to thank Mohammad and Carrie for popping in this morning. Thanks for joining us. Let me start with Carrie. Carrie, you actually have a passion for talking about this topic, right?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. So before we get going with you, can you just introduce yourself a little bit, talk about your background and who you are?
Sure. So my name is Kari Word. I'm formerly Carrie Knisley. I see it's actually still has my maiden name on there in a picture. I'm like, how did that get in there? Anyways, I just got married in October last year. So anyways, Kari Word, I actually have a little different here. I have a bachelor's in business and got into teaching kind of accidentally. I was one of those people that said I would never be a teacher. My dad got into it. Basically because I had moved to South Texas, couldn't get a job doing anything else because I only spoke English. They wanted teachers to speak English in that area because they were trying to get students to learn more English basically. So did a transition to teacher program, long story, then did my master's in educational technology, taught 5 years of middle school math, and through my master's found out about instructional design, got into instructional design, working with higher ed, professors, helping them create their courses online, and started my own company. And so I'm just all over in instructional design, working with a lot of different people and places, and working for PennyMac right now, mortgage company, doing instructional design. I also have a website called otherjobsforteachers.com because I've enjoyed helping so many teachers, try to help them transition and giving them resources. So we can talk more later about any of that stuff if you want, but I love helping them see the possibilities when they feel like there are no possibilities. So,
have you been particularly busy since the pandemic started?
Not as much as I thought I would be. I actually have my hands in quite a few things, so I've tried not to take on too much. I feel like if I would have been able to take on multiple full-time responsibilities, yes, but the part-time responsibilities all have added up so much. So I see that some people really are, and I've also seen that a lot of people who are in instructional design doing separate contracts here and there, their clients have put things on hold, which have then made them not have things to do. So luckily I've had enough to do. I've seen some people that have ramped way up and others that have kind of slowed down as well. So
I mean, it's sort of interesting, just going back to what Lynn had said or had asked about, like where she had offered resources to teachers about, about instructional design and moving your content online. And I know quite a few people that thought, oh my gosh, this is it. We're, instructional designers are now going to get totally hammered because all these teachers are going to be looking for this knowledge, but that didn't really pan out. Do you feel like that's the case, that maybe like Jean was saying, that teachers have kind of no clue about what instructional designers do? Or I don't know if Jean said that, but what's your feedback on that?
So I think there's two different things that are coming in there. Is that one of them, there's current like I was putting out a request for, if you currently are a teacher and want help in your current classroom, let me know, and I'm willing and able to help you, give you any kind of ideas. I actually reached out to somebody specifically who's the head of a department, was like, hey, this is what I do. I don't know if you know, but if you have any questions, let me know. And we had a little conversation back and forth, and they were just like, okay. And I'm like, I can geek out on this all day. So, and they didn't take me up on it. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So I think there's that. And then I think there's also the other side of things where there's teachers that that know about instructional design, or have kind of gotten an idea, or at least they know they need to and want to leave teaching. It's not for them anymore. They don't know what to do. So I've had lots of people reaching out over the years, and a lot recently as well, trying to figure out what is instructional design, how do I get into it? I've been applying, why am I not getting in? And I've enjoyed usually like 1 or 2 phone calls a week with people in the morning when I'm on my morning walk, trying to help give them advice and feedback as to what they might be able to do for that. So it's like two different things I see there.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right. Thanks for that. Now I'd like to introduce everybody to Mohammad. Mohammad, first time on screen with us. Thanks for joining. Tell us a little bit about your background.
First of all, hi. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me in. Okay, so I started my career from Pakistan, and I was an LMS administrator at that point of time, and then I got an opportunity in Dubai, and I was working for a company who they deal with aluminum smelter and manufacture aluminum and all those kind of things, and then. I was working there as a learning and development specialist, and I was designing and developing simulation-based courses. They have implemented SAP over there at that point of time, and they want me to design simulation-based trainings on that. I worked over there, and then I joined a college, a government-owned college over there. Name of the college is Higher Colleges of Technologies, and I was working there as an instructional designer and LMS administrator as well. One of the basic responsibility was to interact with the teachers and students and guide them through with the learning management system that we have implemented and help them in terms of building their own curriculums. I personally, I don't have any teaching experience, but I have interacted with so many teachers, so I can understand where you guys are coming from, and it's been awesome that I have been given that opportunity, and see the other side of stories as well. Try to understand that what they are going through when they deal with students and all those kind of things. I worked over there for like 3 years, and then I moved here in Miami. Was working at Visa, and now I'm working for Citrix as an instructional designer. So overall, I have like 12 years of experience in instructional design, where I have developed more than 300 e-learning courses, and for both corporate sectors and education sectors, both. And On the side note, like because of this pandemic, there are so many things that are happening and so many things have happened. I have seen so many teachers interacting with me, reaching out to me and asking for help. And I don't see this as a competition. What I think about it, when I think about it, I just see it that if they are interested and if they want to be an instructional designer, why don't I help them out? So I have introduced this mentoring session program kind of thing on Facebook, where what we normally do is we ask people if they are interested and if they are teachers and want to join us, and we help them out. I have mentored, I think, 4 people for now, and there were like 4 sessions in each. In one program there are like 4 sessions, and I'm getting a very good response, in the sense like it's good to help people out and try to help them out in terms of giving advices, as Carrie was saying, giving advices, helping them out in terms of their resumes, what are the things that should be knowing about instructional designs and all.
Love it. That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Mohammad.
Yeah.
So you are currently mentoring teachers now
Yes.
in instructional design.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's like perfect for this next question. And I'm just going to throw this out to Carrie. I mean, Carrie, what advice do you offer teachers that are interested in a career in instructional design?
A lot. I would say most importantly is to continue networking, learning from other people, getting involved. Like for me anyways, most beneficial for me, and it might be different for everybody else, but what's helped me the most is getting involved in LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups, watching YouTube videos, Googling, learning, having that curiosity mindset and constantly trying to learn more. Networking with other people and learning about what other people are doing, because you can ask one person what an instructional designer does. You can ask 10 people what an instructional designer does, and you're going to get 10 different answers, because what it technically would be defined as is going to vary in different places, and then people use that job description in different places, different ways. So just learning consistently. And I do have to throw out there and say, I know I hear a lot of people say, you know, like you have to have a portfolio. And I had mentioned this in there. I do just want to say that I don't think a portfolio is hurting you in any way. I think a portfolio is great. But I hear a lot of teachers come to me and say, well, I don't have a portfolio. I don't have anything I can show and I can't apply. And my instant reaction, and when people are so gung-ho on portfolios, like I get it, and that's a great way to weed people out at times. But I personally don't even have a great portfolio. My portfolio kind of sucks right now, to be honest with you, because I haven't had the time to put into it. So I really, really try to encourage people, don't let that stop you, because networking and a lot of times you're going to find jobs by networking and getting to know people. And that to me is more important than the profile. So, or the portfolio. Portfolio is definitely important. I don't want to say it's not, but I don't want to discourage them and say you don't have a portfolio so you can't apply, because there's going to be some people out there and some jobs that are open that will give them the chance. Might be harder, but there will be an opportunity here. And I mean, that's pretty much how I've gotten most of my contracts and employment opportunities, is by building relationships, showing what I can do, and discussing through communication, and then maybe showing my screen to show them some proprietary type stuff rather than a full portfolio. So
yeah, that portfolio can just seem like such a, you know, just a huge task to have to take on. I know that gives people, like, you know, a great deal of anxiety just trying to manage it, because there's so much that is, you know, involved in in building stuff like that out. I totally get what you're saying. Randy, how about you? I mean, you're kind of right in it, you know, sort of, you know, like, so advice, like for somebody like yourself that is moving more towards instructional design. And I know that you've got, have you completed some certifications? Are you in the midst of doing some certifications in instructional design right now?
I'm right in the midst of it. So I've got, it's a 5-course program through Oregon State University. And I'm at I think right now I'm at the 4th one. I think Princess Small, who's in the chat right now, was also in the program with me. I think she just finished it. So I'm trying to take pieces from, you know, artifacts that I create through those class assignments and put those on there, while also kind of applying that to my own classroom. But you know, it's really good to hear Carrie's advice, because I think that whole portfolio piece has kind of stopped me from applying to jobs and kind of made me feel like that, you know, it's not adequate, and that I think that's been kind of a block. So that's really actually comforting to hear.
No, that's great. I'm going to ask Mohammad. So you're working directly with teachers now. Are there any of them that are like, that you're like, wow, you can be an instructional designer? Like, are you mentoring anybody that you're like, you could get an instructional design job right now?
You know, the one thing that I have noticed over these sessions, because I have, like, you know, the first session is like one of the sessions where you make an impression about people, right? And when you are talking to them, you kind of know how much they know and how much they don't know, right? I think that many people, like I have interacted with, they have kind of sort of different definitions of instructional design. And they're like, oh yeah, let's design an e-learning course and we are instructional designers. Or something like, you know, has to do with, oh yeah, I have this content, but all I have to do is work on any tool to develop something, and voila, I'm an instructional designer. Having a proper foundation of instructional design itself, it's very important, right? And this is what I normally suggest to all of my mentees, that, okay, you know about instructional design, tell me about it. How do you define an instructional design? What are the modalities that you normally follow when you say that you are in instructional design? How do you develop a content? Or what type of content that you have developed so far? And to be honest, after 2 questions, they are like blank faces. And 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 that's the part where I want to help them out, because if you see instructional design and the modalities of it, the first part is analysis. And the first thing that you have to do is analyze the gap. And that's the part that I always come up with, to analyze the gap. And then I'm like, okay, this is the part that he or she has to work on. This is the part he or she has to work on. And then I list them down. And then my mentoring session changes depending on the gaps that I'm trying to fill, right? Now, Gene, I know Gene was mentioning that that many teachers, they know about instructional design, but they have no idea what instructional design is whatsoever. Um, and and when it comes to the portfolio, what I normally do in the mentoring session is like, okay, you don't have to worry about the portfolio for now. First, let's get on the basics, try to understand what we are talking about. Let's have a same level because you have a knowledge. You are educating students right now. So you kind of know how to deliver your content. All you have to do is change the delivery method and change the formatting of your content. So you have to be more critical about the content. You have to be more critical about your students and all those kind of things. So I try to guide them out. And then what we normally do is after second session, we start working on one of the authoring tools, like for example, article storyline, right? I try to show them that, okay, this is how you do it. These are the videos that are already available. Now you have 15 days of assignment where you have to explore the tool and design something for me on the topic you like. So any teacher, like for example, chemistry teacher, right? She must be an expert in chemistry, right? I want her to pick her favorite topic and design something which should not be, wordy and should not take a lot of time to have me understand what's going on and what's not. And then I try to review that content and give my feedback. This way, we are trying to kill, you know, two birds in one stone. She is working on her portfolio, right? Because once she is done with that particular course, she will have something to show. And second, she will understand instructional design as well once I will review that particular content.
Oh, wow. That is great, Mohammed. Great stuff. Hey, do you have any people that you're mentoring, that you started mentoring and they're like, no, nah, not going to do this. I can't handle
I
instructional design. Does that ever happen?
I found a few, and then after meeting the first time when I asked those kind of questions, oh, that is not for me. That is not for me, and they didn't show up
Okay.
in the second session. I'm like, okay, as long as you are like kind of going away with it, I'm okay with that. Uh, and this is, I think, and I have I really like teachers because every time when you sit with them, when you talk to them, you will learn something new, right? Because they have so much experience working with students, right? When it comes to instructional design, I think there are so many other things that you need to work on. Like, for example, when it comes to evaluation, when it comes to what is, content that should be there, should not be there, need to know versus nice to know, and all those kind of things. If a person who is a teacher and want to be an instructional designer, that person would love the mentoring sessions that we are conducting right now. I have one teacher, she's a primary school teacher, and she showed her interest. She want to be an instructional designer, and I'm done with we are done with fourth session. And after the fourth session, she showed me her e-learning course, right, on articular storyline, which was like 10-minute course. I'm like, you don't have to work like too much about it. The only thing that you need to consider is to write a proper objective, make sure that the content that you have selected must accomplish, right, with the objective, like it should be in the same level. And the last thing is that how are you evaluating your objective, like what type of questions that you're writing. And that's the basic thing that I taught her, and she is doing an amazing job.
That's great. That's great to hear, Mohammed. Okay, so I'm running out of time here. I'm going to ask just a couple more questions. And Carrie, I'm going to start with you. Can having a teaching background have a negative impact on your career as an instructional designer? Are there things that you have to
Yes.
unlearn? Yeah.
Oh, and unlearn. I guess I was thinking from more of a professional standpoint where, some people do look at, oh, you're just a teacher, like, oh, you can't do this. I mean, it's common. I mean, I've worked for people before that I hear them as management saying like, oh, we can't hire them because they're just a teacher. But then others are like, oh, they're a teacher, we want them. So it just kind of depends on their experience of teaching. So you're looking to see if there's anything that I learned as a teacher that I have to unlearn. Oh gosh, I hadn't thought of it from that point of view. I don't have an answer right now, but if anybody else does, go for it.
Yeah, that's great. Randy, how about you? I mean, anything in your background where you kind of have noticed that like, oh, I got to unlearn that, or, you know, if I had, well, anyway, go ahead.
I think one of the things that I'm kind of struggling with is, and I think someone else mentioned this in the chat, is like rethinking project management. And I think, you know, when I started out teaching English as a second language, in some of these schools, I was just given a book and it was like, go teach. And it was a very content first approach. And I think one of the things that I'm seeing in the coursework I've done in instructional design and then the communities I've been a part of is that project management, when you enter the instructional design world, looks very different than it does for the, you know, the teacher that might be, you know, I'm teaching 4 different writing classes this fall, and I'm trying to really start looking at planning with the instructional design lens. And that's kind of new for me, and something that I didn't always do before. And so I feel like that's one big area that I'm trying to kind of unlearn, is how I kind of developed a content first approach to teaching and not really backwards design, plan everything out.
Nice. All right. Awesome. All right. Well, I think we've hit 9 o'clock, so I'm going to just wrap things up. What I want to say is, in our Slack channel on tldchat.us, if you go there, I think it is, go to the Slack channel. I have a private channel right now. It's called Teacher 2 ID. I'm just going to type it in here. Teacher 2 ID. If you search for that particular channel, you should be able to find it. Give me like 10 minutes because it's private right now, but I'm going to post like cause there's so much chat happening, that is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to post that chat text in there. And then also all of the questions that were part of this broadcast are in there as well. A lot of them unanswered, or we didn't even bring them up. You can look at those, and I would be happy if you would respond to those as well. Altogether, there's just so much to talk about here. Carrie is a fantastic resource if you guys are interested at all in, you know, continuing or finding more about this topic. She has a website that I was looking at over the weekend. It's absolutely incredible. So check it out. And with that, you guys, that's it. Have a great Thursday next week. Oh, we've got a great case study with that Kristen Hayden-Safdie is going to be hosting with Joe Polacchino from T-Mobile. It's going to be a really, really good one on a video e-learning course that he created for T-Mobile. So don't miss that one. Randy's got something coming up. I've got Alan coming up as a member showcase and lots more content. So yeah, keep an eye out on TLDcast. Thank you to my guests, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Take
Bye,
care.
everybody.